Romance of Sui in Tang Dynasties Chapter 93.
I want you to imagine a world where the government has just completely collapsed.
Right, total chaos.
Yeah, the capital city is literally burning.
Mm.
And the new guy in charge, the usurper, is sitting on the throne. But get this, he isn't worried about the economy at all.
No, not at all.
His biggest concern, his absolute top priority, is whether the horses are going to dance for him.
It sounds like a fever dream, doesn't it? Or maybe some kind of surrealist painting. But we are talking about a very specific, very strange historical reality today.
We absolutely are. And look, usually when we talk about civil wars and massive historical rebellions, we are talking about troop movements or supply lines.
The logistics of war.
Exactly. But this specific text, this source, creates this fascinating study on loyalty and irony through the lens of, well, the entertainment industry.
It really is a brilliant analysis of performative power. The source asks a remarkably simple question. Can you fake legitimacy if you just have the right costumes and the right music?
And the answer, as we are going to find out today, involves elephants throwing wine cups and horses basically dancing themselves to death.
It is a wild ride.
It's so wild. But before we get to the dancing animals, we really have to set the stage with the human element of the story. We are right in the middle of the Lushan rebellion.
Right. So to ground us, this is the mid-8th century. The Tang dynasty is completely on the ropes. And Lushan is this larger-than-life rebel general who is just swept down from the north.
He's the usurper we mentioned.
Exactly. He has captured the western capital, Chang'an, and the eastern capital, Luoyang. In video game terms, he has captured the flag. He has won the war.
But the way the source material describes him in this massive moment of victory is just so interesting. You would expect him to be confident or maybe even a bit arrogant.
Sure, he just toppled an empire.
Right, but instead, he acts like someone who just broke into a house and is absolutely terrified the owners are about to come back.
That is a perfect analogy. Because he is technically the emperor now. Or at least he calls himself that.
Yeah.
But his first instinct isn't to govern the people. It is to loot. The Chronicle specifically describes him emptying out the imperial treasuries, gold, silver, priceless silks.
And what does he do with it?
He ships it all straight back to his home base in Fanyang.
Fanyang being the frontier region, right,
Yeah.
up in the rough militaristic north.
Exactly. That is his comfort zone. It is almost as if he doesn't actually believe his own hype. He is sitting in the most sophisticated palace in the known world, but he's packing his bags just in case things go south.
It's a huge tell.
It betrays a massive, massive insecurity. He has the hardware of the empire, the cities, the massive armies, but he knows he completely lacks the software.
And by software, we are talking about the culture, the actual undeniable legitimacy of a ruler.
Precisely. And that is exactly why he becomes completely obsessed with the palace staff. He rounds up everyone, the eunuchs, the palace maids, the musicians and dancers of the Pear Garden.
Okay, for those who might not know, we should probably clarify what the Pear Garden actually is, because this was not just some local garage band.
Oh, no. Think of the Pear Garden as a combination of Juilliard, the Royal Academy of Arts, and Broadway, all rolled into one massive state-sponsored institution.
The best of the best.
The absolute best. These were the most elite performers in the world. They were the ultimate symbols of the Tang Dynasty's golden age.
And Lushan captures all of them. And he issues this chilling order. He basically tells them, you will perform for me exactly as you did for the old emperor, or else.
The penalty for hiding or refusing was death.
It is the ultimate fake-it-till-you-make-it approach to dictatorship.
Yeah.
He genuinely thinks that if he just hears the same elite music, he will magically become the same kind of revered ruler.
He wants the sensory experience of being emperor. He wants the validation that comes with the ritual. And that brings us to the most bizarre part of his whole inventory check. Because he doesn't just want the human performers.
No, he does not.
He demands the royal animals. Specifically, he wants the dancing horses and the wine-serving elephants.
And this is where the story shifts from a standard historical drama to, wait, did that actually happen? Because the text spends a lot of time establishing just how incredibly trained these animals were.
We are not talking about simple circus tricks here.
Not at all. This was on a completely different level.
You really have to understand the sheer scale of the Tianbao era. That was the golden age that Lushan just destroyed. The imperial banquets back then were an absolute assault on the senses.
Paint a picture for us. What did that look like?
The text describes thousands of musicians performing at once. You had the seated department, which was a group of musicians up on the hall platforms, playing very refined string instruments.
Very elegant, very classical.
Right. And then down below, in the courtyard, you had the standing department. And that was hundreds of drums and horns just blasting.
And they have these massive visual props too, right? The text mentions these things called mountain cars and land boats.
Yes, these were elaborate, massive props carrying even more musicians. It was industrial-scale entertainment. And right in the middle of this absolute cacophony, you had the horses.
The dancing horses.
Yes, these were horses that had been painstakingly trained for years to recognize very specific drum beats and melodies. When a specific tune played, like the Song of the Upturned Cup, they wouldn't just trot around.
They actually danced.
They would bob their heads, they would stomp their hooves in perfect rhythm and spin in these precise, coordinated circles.
It is so surreal to visualize. And what about the elephants?
The elephants were even more elaborate. They were trained to walk up to the throne, kneel before the emperor, curl their trunks around a cup of wine, and present it up to him as a toast.
That is wild.
It was the ultimate symbol of the emperor's mandate to heaven. The philosophical idea was that the emperor's virtue was so incredibly great, so pure, that even the wild beasts of the jungle naturally submitted to him.
So when you frame it like that, you can totally see why Lushan is so desperate to get his hands on them. They are the ultimate prop.
Exactly.
If he can get an elephant to bow to him and serve him wine, it proves to everyone watching that he is the real deal.
It is a shortcut to legitimacy. He doesn't have the royal bloodline, he certainly doesn't have the history, but he truly believes he can just buy the image.
There is a really poignant quote in the source material about this, a poem by a scholar named Xiao.
Oh, that poem captures the irony perfectly.
It really does. He basically points out that while the old emperor was busy teaching horses to dance on these luxurious embroidered rugs, he wasn't watching the borders.
Right. The luxury essentially invited the theft. The empire became so entirely obsessed with the performance of power that they completely forgot about the reality of power.
Which is usually sharp things made of metal.
Precisely. And now, Lushan, the guy who brought all those sharp metal things, wants the dancing horses for himself. He thinks that just possessing the symbols of the Golden Age makes him the rightful heir to the Golden Age.
So he sets up this massive test for himself. He invites all the tribal chieftains, the warlords who actually helped him win the war, to this huge banquet.
This is his big coming out party.
Right. It's his moment.
He wants to show off. He is telling his allies, look, I am the true emperor now. Not only do the people support me, but even the animals recognize my absolute greatness.
He is staking his entire new reputation on this one moment.
He really is.
So I want you to imagine the scene. You've got these rough, battle-hardened warlords from the frontier sitting around this delicate palace drinking.
Probably feeling a little out of place themselves.
Oh, definitely. And Lushan is sitting up on the emperor's throne, probably sweating a little bit, waiting for the big finale. And then the giant doors open. The handlers bring in the royal elephants.
These massive, majestic creatures, they're led right to the foot of the throne. The music plays. They're supposed to kneel.
But they don't.
No, they don't. Something happens that Lushan clearly did not account for. The elephants look up at the throne.
And they see him.
They see him. And they realize this isn't the guy.
It is so incredible to me that the historical text gives the elephants that level of explicit agency. It says they stood rigid and stared angrily.
They don't just fail to perform a trick. They actively refuse to participate.
The tension in that room must have been completely suffocating.
Oh, the animal handlers are absolutely panicking. They know full well that if this goes wrong, their heads are going to roll, so they try to force the issue.
Right, they step in.
One of the handlers actually puts a wine cup into an elephant's trunk and tries to physically guide it up into a toast to Lushan.
And this is the climax of the scene. The elephant doesn't just drop the cup. It violently recoils. It curls its trunk back and just flings the wine cup several yards across the room.
Yeah. It is a total, undeniable rejection. It is almost as if nature itself is standing there saying, you are a total fraud.
And how does the room react?
They lose it. The text says the tribal chieftains start snickering. They're covering their mouths, hiding their laughter in their robes.
That is amazing.
Because you can bribe a general, and you can certainly threaten a politician, but you absolutely cannot gaslight an elephant. The entire illusion of his legitimacy shatters instantly.
And Lushan must have been absolutely mortified.
Oh, he was totally humiliated. The text describes him as shamed and annoyed. And as is typical of a tyrant whose ego just got bruised, he violently lashes out.
He calls them evil beasts.
Yes, He calls them evil beasts and orders
Yeah.
every single one of them to be killed on the spot. He cannot handle the truth of his own illegitimacy, so he destroys the messenger.
It is a really satisfying moment for the reader. On one hand, the bad guy gets publicly embarrassed by nature. But this immediate execution leads us directly into the darker, much more tragic part of the story. Because now, Lushan is deeply paranoid. He starts thinking, well, if the elephants publicly rejected me, what about the horses?
He doesn't even give the horses a chance to perform. He assumes they're going to be stubborn, just like the elephants were, so he makes a decision that is incredibly practical, but completely tragic.
He sends them away.
He orders the famous dancing horses to be sent out to the military stables.
He basically reassigns the royal ballerinas to the front lines of a brutal war.
Exactly. He mixes them right in with the regular, everyday war horses. And this sets the stage for what I think is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the entire chronicle.
It really is. So we move from the opulent palace down to a dusty military camp run by General Shi Siming, who is one of the main rebel leaders.
The atmosphere is totally different here. It's dirt, it's blood, it's rough soldiers blowing off steam. They're holding a banquet, but it's a loud, rowdy military mess hall banquet.
And naturally, because it's a banquet, they have some music playing in the background.
And tied up nearby, just eating out of a standard trough, are a few of these former dancing horses. They look exactly like regular horses. The rebel soldiers have absolutely no idea what they are.
Then the drums kick in, the beat drops, and for these horses, that specific sound is a massive trigger.
It's pure muscle memory.
They have been conditioned for a decade that when they hear that specific rhythm, they have a job to do.
So they stop eating, they stand up, they start shaking their tails, they start bobbing their heads, and they start to dance.
Now, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a rebel soldier from the northern frontier. You have never seen a dancing horse in your entire life. You don't even know such a ridiculous luxury exists.
Not at all.
You look over at the stables, and this massive war horse is swaying and spinning in perfect circles to the music.
To them, it looks like pure madness. They think the horses are possessed or maybe having some kind of violent seizure.
Right.
The text actually says the soldiers called the behavior monstrous.
It completely freaks them out.
It does.
So they do what hardened soldiers do when they see an animal doing something unpredictable and threatening. They grab their heavy riding whips.
And this is where the tragedy just compounds on itself. The soldier strikes the horse to make it stop acting crazy. But the horse doesn't understand the concept of stop.
No, the horse interprets the pain entirely through the lens of its training.
Exactly. It thinks, I must be out of rhythm.
It thinks, I'm not dancing well enough. I need to try harder to please them. So the horse stomps its hooves even more vigorously. It spins faster. It desperately tries to get back in sync with the beat of the drums.
Which, of course, just terrifies the soldiers even more. They see this massive animal acting even crazier after being hit, so they hit it harder.
It is a horrific feedback loop of total misunderstanding. The harder they beat the horse, the more frantically it tries to dance. And the more it dances, the harder they beat it.
Until finally, the soldiers just beat the horses to death.
God, that is so grim. It's such a heavy, heavy metaphor.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the text makes a very explicit point here. It says, good horses are not as good as arrogant elephants.
That's a powerful line.
Because the elephants died defying the tyrant. They had a sense of agency. They knew exactly who they were and who he was.
And they refused to compromise.
Right. But the horses, they died trying to please people who completely misunderstood them. They died because they literally could not stop being what the old system had made them to be.
It really serves as a warning, doesn't it, about serving the wrong master? Or maybe about continuing to blindly perform your role for a system that has completely changed around you.
Absolutely. The horses were following the old rules in a completely new world, and it got them brutally killed. But the story doesn't just leave us with a tragedy about dead animals. It uses this event to pivot to a very, very sharp critique of the humans in the story.
Right, because we have this glaring contrast built up. We have spent all this time talking about dumb beasts and lowly entertainers, but then the text holds up a mirror to the high officials.
The elites of the empire.
The guys with the top-tier education. The guys who spent their entire lives studying ethics and philosophy and statecraft.
The irony is just scathing. These were men who built their entire, incredibly lucrative careers on talking loudly about loyalty and righteousness. They proudly wore the robes of elite Confucian scholars.
But when Lushan actually kicked down the door to the capital, what did they do?
They folded instantly. The Chronicle specifically notes that they served the enemy with a smiling face.
With a smiling face, they didn't just surrender, they eagerly collaborated.
They completely rationalized it. And I think that is the core difference between the human and the animal in this specific story. The human intellect is an incredibly powerful tool that can easily be used to justify cowardice.
Oh, for sure. The officials probably told themselves things like, well, I need to survive to protect my family's wealth. Or I can do more good for the people if I stay in the administration, even under a tyrant.
They intellectualized their own betrayal, whereas the elephant just reacted.
The elephant had pure instinct.
It had a solid moral core that simply couldn't be rationalized away by complicated arguments. Meanwhile, imagine a city that is holding its breath.
Right.
We are in Chang'an, which was the absolute jewel of the medieval world, the capital of the Tang dynasty. But the poetry is gone. The glorious parties are gone. It's occupied territory now.
Completely occupied.
The streets are dead silent, the markets are empty, and the people are terrified that a single wrong word or even just the wrong look could get them executed.
It's a city living under a microscope. I mean, paranoia is the new currency. The vibrant life that defined the Tang era has just been completely suffocated.
And here is the contrast. Inside the palace, specifically at the frozen jasper pool, there's a party happening. And it's not just a dinner. It is a meticulously choreographed, color-coded explosion of ancient cosmology and music.
It is a scene of absolute cognitive dissonance. You know, on one side you have mass arrests and neighbors turning on neighbors, and on the other, inside the walls, you have this music of the spheres being played in perfect harmony.
That is exactly where we are heading today, which is the feast at frozen jasper pool. Because looking at the source material, this isn't just a tyrant throwing a farewell bash, is it?
No, absolutely not. If you just scratch the surface, this feast is a collision point. You have the ancient theory of the five elements, the very structure of the universe, being weaponized.
Weaponized to justify a rebellion.
Exactly. You have a psychological war being waged on the artists of the capital. And ultimately, you have a shocking, bloody act of individual defiance by a musician named Lei Hai-king.
It's incredibly cinematic. We're going to look at the chaos in the capital that led up to this, the incredibly specific visual symbolism of the performance, which I know you're excited to break down, and then that final fatal confrontation. So let's set the stage. And Lushan, the rebel leader, is in charge of Chang'an. What is the vibe on the ground?
If I had to sum it up in one phrase, it would be systematized terror. The source material describes a city that is essentially gripping its own throat. And Lushan hasn't just conquered the city, he's trying to rewire its entire social fabric. He institutes a system of guilt by association that is, frankly, terrifying.
Right. And the text mentions something about the imperial treasury here.
Yeah.
During the initial invasion, things got chaotic. Some citizens looted the treasury, which, to be fair, is what happens when governments collapse. It's just a free-for-all.
Yeah. Power vacuum, opportunistic looting, it happens. But Lushan's response is diabolical. He orders that all treasury items must be returned immediately. But he doesn't use his own police to find them. He encourages neighbors to inform on neighbors.
Wait, so he turns the population against itself. That seems incredibly dangerous for social stability.
It is dangerous, but it's effective for control. If you have a grudge against the guy next door, you just accuse him of hiding a piece of imperial silk. The officials don't bother verifying the claims. They just arrest and execute. It's described as a dragnet where no one is safe.
That destroys trust completely. You can't organize a resistance if you can't trust the person living right next to you. You're too busy wondering if they're going to sell you out for a stolen vase.
That's the whole point. It's isolation through fear. But amidst this terror, there's this desperate, almost heartbreaking hope. The source describes a rumor mill running over time. The people miss the Tang King, Emperor Lilongji. They are desperate for a savior.
I was struck by the detail about the dust scare. It felt so visceral. Can you walk us through that? It sounded almost like mass hysteria.
It essentially was mass hysteria. It's a fascinating psychological detail for you to consider. The tension is so high that the citizens are actually hallucinating salvation. The text says that sometimes people would just shout that the Crown Prince's army is here.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And everyone, shopkeepers, families, would rush out of the city to welcome them, leaving the markets completely abandoned.
Just based on a shout, with absolute no verification.
Just based on hope. They wanted it to be true so badly, and it got so bad that even An Lushan's generals started seeing things. They would see dust rising in the north, probably just wind or trade caravans, and they'd panic. They'd think the counterattack is finally coming.
That tells me the conquerors were just as jumpy as the conquered. They know they don't really belong there. They're looking over their shoulders constantly.
They really are, and Lushan realizes this. He looks at Chan and thinks this place is a powder keg. He decides he can't stay. He plans to move his operation back to Luoyang, the eastern capital, which was his main power base. It's safer and more secure.
But he's not the type to just slip out the back door in the middle of the night. He seems like a guy who needs to make an exit.
Oh, absolutely. Lushan is all about the projection of power. He appoints his key lieutenants' men like Zhang Tongru and the ruthless Sun Zhao to hold the fort, but before he marches out, he demands a spectacle. He orders a massive farewell feast at the Four Seasons Garden.
Specifically at the frozen jasper pool.
Yes, the Ningbiqi.
And who is on the guest list? Is it just his cronies?
It's everyone who matters. Civil and military officials, his son and Kingsu. But crucially, and this is where our story really begins, he summons the absolute elite of the cultural world, the disciples of the Pear Garden and the court musicians.
The Pear Garden. We hear that term a lot in Chinese history. Let's pause on that for a second for anyone who might not know. These aren't just local gig musicians, are they?
No, not at all. Think of them as the emperor's personal orchestra combined with the royal ballet, but with the celebrity status of modern pop stars. They are the cultural symbol of the Tang Dynasty's golden age. To have them perform is to say you hold the mandate of culture.
So possessing them is a flex. It's not just about getting some entertainment for the evening.
It's the ultimate flex. It's like capturing the crown jewels, but these jewels can sing and play instruments. And Lushan wants to show that he hasn't just conquered the land, he's conquered the culture itself. Now, the source notes a tragic split here. Some of the top musicians, like the famous flute player Li Mo, managed to flee west with the emperor, but many others were left behind. They're trapped.
And this brings us to our protagonist, Lei Heiking. He's one of these trapped musicians. And when he gets the summons, he tries to pull a move that I think is deeply relatable to anyone listening. He calls in sick.
He does. But let's be clear. In this context, calling in sick is an act of extreme bravery. It's passive resistance. He feigns a severe illness to avoid performing for the traitor. But Lushan is obsessed with the legitimacy. When he notices Lei Heiking is missing, he doesn't just say to get an understudy.
Because Lei Heiking is too famous.
Exactly. The set isn't complete without him. And Lushan says, Lei Heiking is the best. I don't care if he's dying, bring him here.
The text actually says he orders the guards to drag him there, even if he has to be physically supported. That image is chilling, being hauled out of your sickbed to play music for the man destroying your city.
Right. There is no opt-out clause in a tyranny. So Lei Heiking is forced to the palace. And this is where we transition from the gritty reality of the occupation to the absolute surrealism of the feast. And I have to say, for the listener who loves symbolism and history, this next part is a goldmine.
Oh, this was the most striking part of the reading for me. It's not just a bunch of people walking onto a stage. It's a cosmological map come to life. But I have to ask why? Why does a warlord like Lushan care about color-coding his musicians?
It's the application of wuxing, or the five elements theory. And Lushan organizes 120 musicians into 5 distinct groups based on the compass directions and their corresponding elements. He does this because in ancient Chinese philosophy, dynasties change according to the cycle of the elements.
So it's about proving he's supposed to be in charge.
Exactly. By ordering the music this way, he's saying he is not a usurper. He is the inevitable next step in the cosmic cycle. He is aligned with the laws of the universe.
So it's propaganda, but on a metaphysical level. Let's break down the visuals because the level of detail is obsessive. Let's start with the East.
Okay, so in the 5 elements, East corresponds to wood. So this group enters wearing green caps, green brocade robes, and jade belts.
Jade makes sense. It's a green stone, very precious.
Right. They carry a green banner that says Eastern Note Jew. But here's the kicker. The characters on the banner are written in red gems.
Why red gems on a green banner? Is it just for aesthetic contrast? Or is there a deeper meaning?
It's much deeper. It represents the generative cycle of the elements. In this cycle, wood creates fire, think of burning wood. Red is the color of fire. So the banner itself represents the cycle of creation moving forward. The East, which is wood, is birthing the South, which is fire.
That is, wow. Okay, so logically, the next group is South.
Yes, South is fire. So you have musicians in red caps, red robes, and coral belts.
Coral. That deep red organic material, I assume that was rare.
Extremely rare. It had to be imported from coastal regions, often from great distances. It screams luxury. Their banner is red, reading Southern Note Zeng.
Okay, I see the logic now. It's linking the current element to the next one in the chain. So let's move west.
West is metal. White caps, white robes, white jade belts. The banner is white, reading Western Note Shang, and the characters are in black gold.
Which brings us north. This one had the most interesting material to me.
North is water, black caps, black robes, and for the belts they wear a rhinoceros horn.
Rhinoceros horn, that is exotic.
It was an incredibly precious material, usually dark, and associated with water and exotic origins from the far south or west. Their banner is black, reading Northern Note U, and the characters are made of kingfisher feathers.
Kingfisher feathers, that iridescent blue-green. I've seen that in museums. It's stunningly bright.
It is, and it connects the cycle back.
The center, the most important spot.
The center is Earth. This is the anchor. Yellow caps, yellow robes, amber belts. The banner is yellow, reading Central Note Gong, and this one is the most lavish. The characters are made of silver and 5 colored gems.
Why the mix of gems?
The symbolism is that the Earth contains 10,000 treasures. It holds everything. It grounds the other 4 elements.
So picture this. You have 120 musicians divided into these 5 color-coded blocks, marching in perfect clockwork formation. It must have been stunning to watch.
It was likely the most beautiful thing anyone had seen in years. But think about the message on Lushan ascending. Outside the palace walls, chaos, dragnet arrests, blood in the streets. Inside, perfect order, elemental harmony. He's trying to gaslight the court into thinking he is the source of order.
It's dictator chic, high aesthetic, zero morality. He's basically dressing up a massacre in a tuxedo.
Perfectly put. It's using beauty to mask cruelty.
So the band is set. The music starts. The source describes dragon flutes, phoenix organs, stone chimes, the absolute works. The banners are weaving in and out. It must have sounded incredible.
It was the sound of the Tang Court, the literal soundtrack of the empire, and An Lushan is loving it. The text describes him sitting on the throne, stroking his beard in delight, and this leads to his monologue, which is frankly fascinatingly arrogant.
He starts comparing himself to the old emperor, right? Like, look at me now.
He does. He remembers attending feasts like this as a subordinate, just watching from the sidelines, but now he's sitting in the emperor's chair. And he uses this twisted logic. He essentially says Li Sunlang, that's the Tang emperor, spent decades and a fortune training these artists, but he can't enjoy them anymore. He left them for me.
He calls it heaven's fate. That takes some serious ego.
It really does. He frames his usurpation as destiny. He says the only thing missing is Lady Yang Yang Guifei and her sisters. Otherwise, it's perfect. He sees the musicians not as people, but as spoils of war. Inherited furniture.
But the furniture has feelings.
Right, and this is the flashpoint. These musicians spent their entire lives serving the Tang Emperor. They are artists, highly sensitive people. Hearing this traitor gloat about how he owns them now, claiming their art as his destiny, it breaks them. The music is playing, but tears start streaming down their faces.
And An Lushan, he's not exactly known for his empathy. How does he handle a crying orchestra?
Badly. He sees the tears and he doesn't feel pity, he feels rage. To him, their sadness is an insult. It ruins his perfect cosmological picture. He stops the music and issues an ultimatum. He orders his guards to watch the musicians' faces closely. He says anyone who cries gets beheaded.
God. Imagine the pressure. You have to play the most complex music in the world, perfect pitch, perfect rhythm, while a guard is staring at your face with a sword, just waiting for a single tear.
It's the ultimate totalitarian nightmare. Forced joy. They have to wipe their eyes and put on fake smiles. The text says they forced a happy appearance. They are completely terrified.
But not everyone could do it. And this is where the story pivots back to Lei Haking.
Yes. In the middle of this forced cheer, a sound cuts through the hall. It's not music, it's a wail. A loud, agonizing cry of grief.
It's Lei Haking, the man who tried to call in sick, the man they dragged there.
The pressure cooker explodes. Lei Haking just can't fake it. And once he starts crying, he realizes there is no going back. He knows the penalty is death, so he decides to make that death count.
The description of his actions here is so vivid. He doesn't just stand there and weep. He takes action. What does he do?
He rushes the throne. He takes his instrument, likely a lute or a pipa, and he smashes it on the ground.
Why is that act, smashing the instrument, so powerful? I mean, that's his livelihood, that's his art.
It's profound. Think about it. And Lushan wants their music to validate his reign. He wants the beautiful sounds to cover up the screams outside. By destroying the instrument, Lei Haking is saying, you can capture my body, but you cannot have my art. He is denying the tyrant the one thing he wants. He's taking the soundtrack away.
And he doesn't go quietly either. He gives a speech.
He points directly at An Lushan. Remember, An Lushan is surrounded by guards and generals. Lei Haking screams, you rebel thief! You received the immense grace of the emperor and you repaid it with betrayal. Your crimes deserve 1,000 cuts.
Yet it's incredibly reckless. He's signing his own death warrant.
It's the bravery of a man who has already accepted his death. He declares his absolute loyalty to the Tang, and then he drops a specific name. He says, "Today is the day I die for my country, but after I die, my brother Lushan will settle the score. He will execute you rebels and cut you to pieces."
Who is Lei Wenjin? Is he a real general in the story?
Yes, in the context of the romance, Lushan is a fierce, loyal general defending a besieged city against the rebels. By invoking his name, Lei Haiking is bridging the gap. He's saying, "I am just a musician and you can kill me. But the sword of justice is coming for you." He's connecting his cultural resistance to the actual military resistance.
How does Lushan react? Because he's usually the one doing the shouting.
He's stunned. The text says he was dumbfounded, eyes wide, unable to speak for a moment. He's used to people groveling. He's used to fear. He wasn't expecting a musician to verbally eviscerate him in front of his entire court.
But the shock doesn't last long.
No. Once he recovers, the order is brutal. Quickly, chop him down. The guards rush in. And the death is horrific. They don't just execute him, they dismember him right there in the hall.
And the text says he was cursing them until the very end.
Cursing without stopping until death. He denied them the satisfaction of his silence.
It's such a heavy ending. You have this image of the perfect, color-coded musicians, the banners of the 5 elements, the jewels, the gold, and then in the middle of all of it, a smashed instrument and a body on the floor.
It completely shatters the illusion Lushan tried to build. He tried to use the 5 elements to show he was the master of cosmic order, but Lei Haiking's blood on the floor proved that Lushan was just a thug in a stolen robe. The order was fake. The violence was real.
Meanwhile, on one side, we have the disintegration of a tyrant, Lushan, who loses his sight and his mind.
Yeah.
And on the other side, we have the survival of a poet, Wang Wei, who basically uses his art to see through all that darkness.
It's really this incredible study in contrast between hard power and soft power. You have Lushan, who has all the armies, all the weapons, but he's destroyed by a symbol, the ancestral temple.
Right.
And then you have Wang Wei, who has literally no weapons, is rotting in a prison cell, but he manages to save himself with another symbol, a poem.
It's amazing. But before we get into the poetry of it all, we really need to set the board. We need to understand the precarious position Lushan is actually in, because despite taking the capital, Chang'e, things are not looking as good as he thought.
Not at all. The momentum has completely stalled out. If you look at the broader military context from the sources, that initial shock and awe phase of the rebellion, that's over.
Right, the loyalists have regrouped.
Exactly. The crown prince, Suzong, has officially ascended the throne at Lingwu, and this is a massive problem for the rebels because it solves the whole legitimacy crisis for the Tang dynasty.
They have a head again.
They have a head again.
And a really capable body attached to it now. I mean, the text lists this incredibly formidable lineup of commanders rallying around the new emperor. You've got Li Mi taking over grand strategy.
And Generals Gu Zi and Li Guangbi moving in to cut off the rebel supply lines.
Right, so this isn't just a scattered retreat anymore. This is a coordinated counteroffensive.
And Lushan is sitting in the western capital, Chang'e, and the reports coming in are just disastrous. There's a really specific mention of his commander, Ling Huchao, who is trying to capture the city of Yangkou.
Oh, yeah. And he is just slamming against a brick wall named Zhang Xin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zhang Xin is one of those incredible defensive geniuses in history.
Yeah.
He's holding a city with a handful of troops against a massive army. So Lushan looks at the map and realizes Chang'e is basically a trap.
If he stays, he gets completely encircled.
Right.
So he makes the call to retreat back to his power base in the east, to Luoyang. But this is not some strategic, quiet withdrawal in the middle of the night. This is a looting.
Oh, he takes everything.
He decides if he can't hold the capital, he's going to strip it bare.
The text lists, palace women, eunuchs, elephants, horses, rare treasures. But there is one specific group of people he targets that is crucial to our story.
The musicians.
The musicians. He rounds up the Pear Garden Academy, the court orchestras, the dancers. He essentially drags the entire cultural apparatus of the Tang dynasty with him to Luoyang.
Which is such a weird obsession, right? Like, you're fighting a brutal war for survival. Why are you slowing down your baggage train with lute players?
Because in this era, music is incredibly political. It's not just entertainment for banquets, it's ritual. Possessing the royal orchestra is a way of claiming legitimacy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's basically trying to say, I have the music, therefore I am the emperor. He wants to transplant the soul of the Tang court into his new capital.
But before he leaves, he decides to burn the body of the Tang court. Which brings us back to the Taimiao, the imperial ancestral temple. That incident we opened with. Why burn it? He's already looted the city.
It's an act of spiritual severance. The Taimiao houses the spirit tablets of the past emperors. By burning it, he's trying to kill the ancestors.
It's the ultimate desecration.
Exactly. He's telling the population, your past is gone. Your ancestors cannot protect you anymore.
But the text suggests the ancestors definitely had a different opinion on that. The description of the fire is so vivid. The soldiers light the fires on all four sides. And Lushan is sitting on his horse watching. And then this smoke, that's the actual phrasing, loops down.
It's described almost like a guided missile. This column of blue smoke shoots up, reverses course, and blasts right into his eyes.
And the reaction is just immediate.
Yeah.
Visceral.
He's instantly blinded. Tears are flowing like rain. He's in so much pain he can't even maintain his seat on the horse. His generals literally have to pull him down and stuff him into a carriage.
And it's not a temporary thing?
No. The source notes that from that day on, an infection set in and his sight just deteriorated until he was entirely blind. There's a verse in the text that sums it up perfectly. It says, "The rebel destroyed the ancestral temple, so heaven snatched away his sight."
Wow.
It's the universe balancing the scales. You try to erase the vision of the past, so you lose your vision of the present.
So now we have a totally blind warlord retreating to Luoyang. And this physical blindness triggers a complete psychological collapse. The atmosphere in his new court is incredibly toxic.
It's a nightmare scenario for anyone working for him. And Lushan was already pretty volatile, but now he's paranoid, he's helpless, he's in chronic pain.
He becomes super abusive.
Extremely. But here's the great irony. He is bored and depressed, so he demands to listen to music constantly. He has all these talented musicians he kidnapped, but he is terrified of them.
Right, because he remembers Lei Haking, the musician who smashed his instrument and cursed on Lushan right to his face.
Precisely. And Lushan knows that the people playing for him absolutely hate his guts. So he's sitting in the dark, surrounded by this beautiful music, knowing that any one of those musicians would probably kill him if they had the chance.
It's a very specific kind of hell he's built for himself.
It really is.
So while the tyrant is rotting in the dark, let's pivot to the other side of this story. The man who is trying to survive the purge. Wang Wei. Now, for listeners who might only know him as a name in a history textbook, how big of a deal was Wang Wei in this era?
Oh, he was a titan. In the High Tang era, the Golden Age, before the war, Wang Wei was the definition of a polymath.
Yep.
He was a high-ranking government official, a master painter, a calligrapher, and one of the most significant poets in all of Chinese history. He was the guy who could just do everything perfectly.
And the Sutang Yanyi includes this really specific anecdote to establish his genius, specifically regarding music, and it borders on the supernatural.
It does. The story goes that someone showed Wang Wei a painting, just a still image of a musical performance. Wang Wei studies the painting, looks at the placement of the fingers and the posture of the musicians, and says they are playing the neon raiment feather dance.
Okay.
But he doesn't stop there. He says specifically they are on the third stack at the first beat.
Which just sounds impossible. You can't hear a painting.
That's exactly what his peers thought. They assumed he was just bluffing. So, being curious, they actually rounded up a group of top musicians and asked them to play that specific piece.
I love this.
Right. They played through the neon raiment feather dance, and right when they hit the third stack, first beat, the observer shouted, "Halt!" And lo and behold, the musicians frozen in that exact moment looked identically like the painting.
It's such a great story because it establishes that Wang Wei perceives things that other people just miss. He has this absolute pitch for reality. But despite all that genius, he couldn't predict the chaos of the rebellion. He gets stuck in Chang'an when the emperor flees.
Yeah, he was one of the many officials left behind in the panic, and this put him in a terrible position. The rebels were actively rounding up famous officials and forcing them to serve in the new administration.
To give it credibility.
Exactly. Wang Wei knew that if he served the rebels, he would be a traitor forever. But if he refused, he would be dead.
So he comes up with a third option.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really unpleasant.
It's completely desperate. He decides to fake a severe illness. He takes medicine to induce dysentery.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he destroys his own health, makes himself unable to speak or stand, and literally wallows in his own filth. The goal was to make himself so repulsive and so physically broken that the rebels would look at him and say, He's useless to us.
It's a level of commitment to the bit that you just have to respect. Did it actually work?
Partially. And Lushan respected his fame too much to just execute him or ignore him entirely. So instead of forcing him to work in the court, he had Wang Wei locked up in Pushy Temple in Luoyang to recover.
So he's imprisoned in a temple. The tyrant is in the palace, blind.
Yeah.
The poet is in the temple, sick. What is going through Wang Wei's head at this point?
Well, he's a devout Buddhist, so he spends a lot of his time meditating, but he's also fiercely analyzing the situation. When news reaches the prison that An Lushan has gone blind, Wang Wei connects it to a dream the emperor once had.
Oh, right.
The emperor dreamt of the deity Zhangku, the ghost eater, eating a ghost's eye.
And Wang Wei sees the blindness as the fulfillment of that omen.
Right. He thinks the ghost's eye has been eaten. These rebels are ghosts, and they are already dead men walking. It gives him this glimmer of hope.
But that hope is really tested when he hears about the death of Lei Haking, right? The musician who was martyred at the frozen pearl pool.
Yes. That news seems to just break him.
Why did the death of a court musician hit a high-ranking official quite that hard?
It's the shared language of music. Wang Wei realizes that at the rebel banquets, the songs being played to celebrate this massive treason are often his songs.
Wow.
He composed them. His art is being used to soundtrack the destruction of his own country.
That is a violation that goes so much deeper than politics.
It is, and he sees Lei Haking, who smashed his instrument and died for his loyalty. Meanwhile, Wang Wei is sitting in a cell, alive. He likely feels this complex mix of grief, admiration, and probably some shame.
Yeah.
He can't fight physically, he's sick and imprisoned, so he decides to fight with the only weapon he has left. He writes a poem.
This is the Frozen Pearl Pool poem. I have the translation here, actually. It's short, but it is heavy. 10,000 homes, sad, wild smoke rises. When will the officials ever see the emperor again? Autumn leaves fall on the empty palace. And at the Frozen Pearl Pool, strings are playing.
It seems like a simple description of a scene, but every single image is a loaded weapon. Wild smoke implies the total disorder of the rebellion. Autumn leaves suggest the decay of the rightful era.
But that last line...
Right. Mentioning the strings playing at the Frozen Pearl Pool, that is the accusation.
Because that's exactly where the rebels are partying.
Exactly. He is juxtaposing the massive suffering of the 10,000 homes with the grotesque celebration of the rebels. He is saying, the country is weeping and you are playing music.
It's powerful.
It is a poem of mourning, but also of intense condemnation. If the rebel guards had understood the subtext of those lines, they would have executed him on the spot.
So he writes this incredibly treasonous poem in a prison cell. How does he even see the light of day? He can't exactly post it on a bulletin board.
This is where the sheer power of his reputation comes in. The musicians, the ones An Lushan kidnapped, they revered Wang Wei. They would secretly sneak into the temple to visit him. One of them saw the poem. And because it was Wang Wei, they didn't just read it, they memorized it.
And they became the transmission lines.
The poem went viral in the 8th century sense. It passed from musician to servant, from servant to traveler, crossing the front lines of the war, until it eventually reached the court of Emperor Suzong in exile.
That is incredible.
The emperor reportedly wept when he heard it.
A few lines of verse, smuggled out of a prison entirely via memory, proving to the emperor that his official was still loyal.
It really shows that in a world without mass communication, poetry was a form of news. It was a proof of life.
So let's fast forward to the end of the war. The loyalists eventually win. The rebels are completely crushed. The emperor returns to Xin, but now comes the really ugly part, the purge.
Right.
The government has to decide what to do with all the officials who stayed behind.
And it was a brutal process. The emperor divided the collaborators into categories based on the severity of their crime. Many were executed, many were exiled. And Wang Wei was in a very dangerous position because he had technically accepted a title from the rebels.
Even if he didn't actually do the work.
Exactly. He was on the list of the guilty.
But he had two things going for him. First, his brother, Wang Jin.
Wang Jin was a high-ranking official who had served the emperor loyally throughout the entire war. He submitted a petition that is just really touching. He offered to strip himself of his own rank, to accept a massive demotion if the emperor would just spare his brother's life.
Take my career, but give me my brother.
It's a powerful gesture of family loyalty, but the emperor had another reason to be lenient. He remembered the poem.
The Frozen Pearl Pool poem.
He cited it specifically. He said that because Wang Wei had written those lines, at the Frozen Pearl Pool strings are playing, it proved that his heart had never left the Tang. The poem was treated as literal hard evidence in a court of law.
So the poem he wrote in absolute secret, just to express his own grief, ended up being the thing that saved his neck.
It did. He was pardoned and eventually restored to office. And the text makes a really poignant observation here. It says, Lei He-king was martyred, and he became famous because poets wrote about him. Wang Wei was guilty, but he was saved because he wrote about the martyr.
It's this beautiful cycle of art and memory. The martyr needs the poet to be remembered, but the poet needs the martyr to be inspired.
And to survive. It completely challenges the idea that art is just a luxury.